it was the first time that I actually felt hope. I felt excitement from a provider. And, it was an amazing feeling to just feel like I had people in my corner that were not just optimistic, but actually hopeful. So that's how I ended up meeting Sameek.
This is the James Cancer-Free World podcast. I'm Steve Wartenberg, and we have two guests today, Dr. Sameek Roychowdhury here in the studio, and Stefanie Balm, who is 2,000 miles away in Idaho. And in a recent episode, Sameek talked about a new clinical trial he started, the very first nationwide decentralized telehealth clinical trial. It's for a rare form of pancreatic cancer, and this concept that Sameek and his team came up with of utilizing telehealth to create clinical trials for rare forms of cancer with patients across the country could be a real game changer in the future. Stefanie is part of Sameek's trial, and she will share the story of her cancer journey with us. And Sameek will fill us in on the progress of the trial. Welcome, Stefanie and Sameek. Thank you so much, Stefanie, for doing this. And fill us in on your cancer journey, kind of how you were diagnosed and how your treatment initially started.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, it's an honor and pleasure to be able to share my story and journey and just the incredible results that we've been able to have with this medication. I was diagnosed in June 2023 with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And like most people who are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, it was very advanced when they found it. I actually found out in the ER. I had went in thinking that I had some pretty severe gallbladder pain, and it ended up that my liver was covered in innumerable tumors. And they found that there was a very large tumor on my pancreas as well. Up until that point, I'd been just a very typical healthy person. I hadn't had any chronic health issues or anything like that. I had just turned 43, not even a week before, and married with 3 kids, just doing life. So it was just a huge shock. I couldn't believe that this was happening. There's no cancer that's a good cancer, but pancreatic cancer in particular, it seems to be one that it's just often associated with a death sentence. There's just no hope for survival. So pretty much got started with, meeting my original oncologist that I ended up doing my first 9 months of treatment with. And he was very, very smart, but he was solely focused on the statistics. And to be honest, statistics for pancreatic cancer at stage 4 are pretty bad. I think the 5 year survival rate, from what I've seen, is between 1% and 3% of people. So there wasn't a lot of hope. There wasn't a lot of optimism from my doctor. And he said that basically we'd be hoping for maybe 3 to 6 months. And that's if I was doing a very, very aggressive chemotherapy regimen every 2 weeks without fail. So that's what we started on. And I did respond very, very well to chemo. But like I said, there just wasn't a whole lot of hope surrounding my prognosis at that point. And I had, you know, questioned if there was any other options for treatment. And they just said that, nope, this was pretty much the only thing that we were able to do. And even with me researching extensively online, there was nothing for pancreatic cancer.
Wow. So as you're going through this 2,000 miles away here in Columbus, Sameek, you were working on something that would ultimately connect you with Stefanie.
Yeah, so I got to meet Stefanie just about 10 weeks ago by phone and video call. And, first of all, Stefanie, it's really amazing and courageous that you're here sharing your story. So thank you for doing that. I asked you to do it because I want others to know about this trial and have hope for their pancreas cancer. So this is a study of precision oncology where we're trying to tailor the treatment to a patient's cancer based on the genetics. So precision oncology, personalizing treatment. And the challenge with that is that becomes a rarer and rarer event. So if we're talking about a small fraction of pancreas cancer, it becomes hard to do that study, and it becomes a smaller market size when it comes to drug development and investment. So the target that we are looking at in this study for treatment is a gene called fibroblast growth factor receptor, or FGFR. And over the past 10 years, our research lab has done research on this topic and smart drugs against the gene. The gene is mutated in cancer cells, so not in the rest of Stefanie's body, but in the cancer. It has a mutation that turns on the gene and makes cancer grow. And so by targeting that with a smart drug, could we turn it off and make the cancer slow down or stop growing or even shrink? And for about a decade, we've been involved in trials for FGFR smart drugs. And over those years, we've learned that patients do respond if you can personalize their treatment. But we also came across 4 patients with pancreas cancer. And the first time it happened, I was sort of surprised because I'd never seen it before, because it's more common in other cancer types, this gene. FGFR. And the second, third, fourth time, I noticed that all of them were responding to treatment and doing well. And in pancreas cancer, doing well, when we talk about 3 or 6 months, which is what Stefanie was told, that's not uncommon. Our patients were living 3 to 7 years with treatment. And so our challenge was, how are we going to take something that's 1% of pancreas cancer, so quite rare, and develop a drug in this rare population? Could be costly to do it. We'd have to open clinical trial sites in 100 locations nationwide. Very costly.
Because the first 4 patients were all local or came here.
They came to Columbus because of our trials, right? And so they traveled, but that's just not practical, right? For a patient, their family, maybe they have kids that they're taken to school, taking time off to travel on a weekly basis for cancer treatment trials is not feasible for everyone. It's just not practical. And so what also happened around the same time is we all experienced COVID and telehealth. And so we all started using telehealth for all sorts of care and visits, from reviewing your cholesterol to even cancer treatment and chemotherapy. We do a telehealth visit, and then the patient would come to the infusion center to get their treatment, but they didn't actually see their doctor every time. And that sort of helped us get through the COVID pandemic. But what I realized is I could actually give good care to patients, and make it more convenient, save them an extra trip. And so we started thinking about how this could change the way we do trials. And in particular, there was one patient who's no longer with us now, who came to us during the first week of the pandemic in March of 2020, and she had metastatic uterus cancer, and she had the FGFR gene. And so for 6 weeks, we were able to offer her the study, give her informed consent, get her qualified with blood work, CAT scans, and an ophthalmology eye exam, ship her the drug, have her start the pills, which are oral therapies. And 6 weeks later, I met her for the first time. She ended up responding to treatment for about 2 years or so, which was amazing for her metastatic uterus cancer. She unfortunately had a stroke for other reasons that took her life. But from her, that experience caring for her husband, we thought, well, gosh, if we can do it here because of the emergency nature of the pandemic, why don't we do it on purpose, right? And so that was sort of the idea for a nationwide decentralized trial where we are in Columbus and we can treat patients in any state, in any zip code. And that's what the study is about. It's the very first cancer treatment study to do that ever. And we hope that we will be an example for other trials that are being developed. And certainly we are developing additional decentralized nationwide trials. We're so grateful that we're able to reach somebody in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and have an impact.
that it's amazing that you connected. So, Stefanie, how did you hear about and reach out and connect with Sameek and his team?
Okay, so I first heard about Sameek and this trial actually through Dr. Carr, who is based out of the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. At that time, so at the end of the year, I had asked my current local oncologist for a referral to really look into clinical trials. Um, my first chemo cocktail, I guess you could call it, that they had me on to start with. I'd had some progression on it. So then they had switched me to the second option of a chemo cocktail for pancreatic cancer. And I just had this gut feeling that things were not going the direction that we wanted to. I just felt like there was maybe some progression happening. I was watching my tumor markers and everything, and even though everything was still within normal range, it was trending up, and I was starting to have some pain in my liver. So I was very proactive and just said, "Okay, look, by this point, I've been on chemo for the better part of 2.5 years. Physically, it's extremely hard. Emotionally, mentally, those are also aspects that maybe people don't think of. But I mean, it's tough. The first Christmas that after I was diagnosed, I had Christmas with my kids, which was the longest that I've actually been able to spend with them since being diagnosed. And then I went in at 8 o'clock the next morning for 5-hour chemo infusion. So, you talk about things like quality of life. And I just knew that, that wasn't what I considered quality. I wanted to be able to be a mom. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to not have, 2 weeks out of the month where I was just feeling absolutely horrible. So, requested that referral from my oncologist, and Dr. Carr got in touch with me pretty quickly after I did my intake information over the phone. And he's like, "Yep, we definitely want to do a consult with you. I think that we have some good options." And then he asked me if anyone had ever spoken to me about my genetic mutation. And I said, "Nope, nobody's ever said anything. They just basically the consensus was, we don't know why you got this cancer. You don't check any of the boxes, but everything is medically insignificant from what we found." So then he said, "Well, you have this particular genetic mutation, the FGFR mutation, and it's extremely rare. It happens in about less than 1% of pancreatic cancer patients, and I just went online and had found that there is this trial that's taking place out of Ohio State, and that it's actually targeting your specific mutation." So I was really excited about it. I actually had a good amount of hope. Shortly after that, I found out that my gut feeling was right and that I had progression, actually quite a bit of progression on that second chemo regimen. So chemo was off the table, and there was nothing else that my oncologist could offer me. So we had talked about some clinical trials when I went out to Mayo, and he said, "I think this is going to be a good one for you." So we got the referrals out to Ohio State as well as a couple other places, and I just really hoped that we would come across the right one that was going to be right for me, and be able to have good progress. So maybe a week or so later, I was actually watching Netflix, watching Forensic Files and folding laundry. And I saw an Ohio State phone number come up on my phone. And I thought, oh, this must be, someone from scheduling doing an intake. And I answered the phone, and the kindest man introduced himself as Sameek Roychowdhury from Ohio State, and that he had his team with him on conference call, and that they had gotten my information, and were actually really, really excited to have me on this trial, and that they thought that they could help. So um, it was the first time that I actually felt hope. I felt excitement from a provider, and it was an amazing feeling to just feel like I had people in my corner that were not just optimistic, but actually hopeful. So that's how I ended up meeting Sameek.
Sameek, on your side of that phone call, what's going through your mind as you're introducing yourself and describing to Stefanie what options she might have with you.
Well, Stephanie, I can tell you, Dr. Carr called me on that Monday, and within about an hour and 15 minutes, I was calling you. So that was just how long it took me to review some of her records. And we are certainly excited and optimistic and hopeful. All those words are true in your case. And, I think what you shared with us that people sort of didn't recognize that FGFR mutation is because it's new, right? And it's not common knowledge. We have that expertise, and what we're able to do is share that expertise everywhere. So I'm really grateful that Dr. Carr reached out to me. He called me directly.
Did you know Dr. Carr?
As part of our trial, we've done a lot of outreach. So I did meet Dr. Carr by email before that.
Okay. So,
and
that's how he knew about this trial.
I think so, yeah. And so this is a trial that's available to any patient, any zip code, any state, but it doesn't actually physically exist anywhere but here. And so one of the challenges that we had when it opened was to ensure that as many people as possible would hear about it. So one of the things we're doing now is this podcast. We want people to learn. But before today, we had done outreach to every academic cancer center with oncologists specializing in pancreas cancer. So we had reached out by email to hundreds of doctors, including Dr. Carr. And actually, he replied and said how excited he was about this study and the nature of how we were kind of reaching patients nationwide. But we've also done outreach to large community oncology practices that have a couple hundred physicians in each group, anywhere from Texas to Florida to the East Coast, West Coast. We've met with their research leads at their organizations. We've also networked with the diagnostics companies that do a majority of the genetic testing that happens for cancer. When I say genetic testing, we're talking about tumor testing, not hereditary testing. And so we've networked with at least 5 of those companies, and we've asked them to alert physicians to our trial when they find a patient who has the qualifying gene, right? And so however we can reach patients and their doctors, we want to do that so they know that this opportunity is here, that there's hope, there's optimism. As far as patients, we're trying to reach them directly too. There are a number of patient advocacy groups that support patients with pancreatic cancer. PanCAN, or Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, is an example of one of those. We're reaching out to many other groups as well. And again, they meet, counsel, and support patients navigating this journey, right? Stefanie talked about all the burdens and emotional challenges she faces. She wants to be a mom. She wants to be herself, and we want to support that. And that's what these advocacy groups do. So again, I'm very grateful that we got a chance to meet 10 weeks ago. That excitement and optimism is here still.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Stefanie will fill us in on how she's been doing since she started on Sameek's clinical trial.
The best outcomes for treating cancer come from early detection and early diagnosis.
The James Cancer Diagnostic Center at Ohio State
is designed to provide rapid evaluation and a clear diagnosis.
We are transforming care by giving patients direct access
to cancer experts who study and treat cancer every day.
If you think you have cancer, the choice is clear.
Choose the James Cancer Diagnostic Center.
We're back with Stefanie and Sameek. And so 10 weeks ago, you two met via telemedicine. So Stefanie, what happened? Once you started your treatment, how did it work and what happened? What were the results and how are you doing?
Yeah. So when I had actually started my trial, it was about mid-February, just after Valentine's Day. And at that point, with all the progression that I had had, there was a really large tumor on my liver that was very painful. It was to the point where I was having to take oxycodone during the day because it was just really hard to function. So I was not feeling well, in a good amount of pain. And So we did all, kind of the customary, pre-screening stuff and everything to make sure that I was cleared to start treatment, but that happened really, really quick. And literally within 3 days of starting my medication, which just arrived in the mail. So it was super easy. It was not complicated at all. Within 3 days, the pain in my liver was gone. And I thought, okay, this has to be a fluke. There's no way that something could actually work that quickly. So when Sameek was checking in with me, he was, just seeing how everything was going. And I'm like, well, probably not related, but that pain that I've been having in my liver, it's totally gone. And he said, well, that actually could be related to the medication. So from there on out, just week by week, I was feeling better and better. I had less fatigue. I started looking healthier. They coordinated with my local oncologist. So I go in every week for lab work and for fluids. And so I have lots of sets of eyes on me. That was one thing that I was a little worried about with doing a clinical trial was, okay, well, I'm doing this unknown medication. How are they going to know if I'm okay? How are they going to know if I'm responding? How are they going to, make sure I'm not having bad side effects? Well, I have way more sets of eyes on me now than I did when I was doing chemo for years. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was very easy. And I do have side effects, but they're very, very manageable, especially compared to chemo. And I think the biggest thing for me is, going in, seeing my nurses, seeing friends and family, and everyone has told me, you look so good. You look so healthy. You look so vibrant. And this is the first time in the better part of 3 years to where I actually feel normal. I feel healthy. I feel like feel like myself pre-diagnosis. So this is a medication that I could actually see myself maintaining on for the rest of my life and still being able to live a good quality of life. And it's very easy, and I'm very, very thankful for it.
Wow. Well, thank goodness you're doing so well. Thank goodness. And thank goodness you connected with Sameek. So, Sameek, what was going on in her cancer cells? What was this medicine doing, and why was she responding so well? And why was Stefanie doing so much better?
Yeah. So first, Stefanie, I'm so grateful to hear how this experience has been for you, how you're doing, how you feel inside, and that's kind of why we do cancer research. It's not the what and the how, it's the why, and you're our why. And so we're grateful this is working the way we wanted. You know, the cancer cells are dependent on FGFR to help them grow, divide, spread. And when she started taking the pill, a smart drug that inhibits this gene, the protein that it makes, the enzyme, we've taken that signal away. And so now those cancer cells can't grow as well. They can't divide, they can't spread. And, Steffi and I just talked about her CAT scans, right? And the tumors are shrinking. Every single tumor that we could find in her liver has shrunk by at least 50%. And I think that corresponds to how she's feeling, back to herself. The abdominal pain was from the liver metastasis. The nausea that you were having too, that went away after 3 days, was from the liver metastasis. She had abnormal liver enzymes that were elevated. Those have pretty much normalized. She has had an elevated blood marker called CA19-9 that has nearly normalized as well with treatment. So again, I'm filled with hope, optimism, and what you said about taking this therapy for a very long time. I hope that can be the case. We've had success with other patients, and we want this to work for you as long as possible. But that's also why we continue to do research. So Stefanie is also collecting a research blood sample at each of her, or not each, but most of her visits for blood work. And that blood sample is being mailed to our research lab to continue to work on how and why this works the way it does for FGFR and her pancreatic cancer, because we want to stay ahead of her pancreas cancer.
So if and when there's issues, you'll have a new way to go about.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So Stefanie, this has been and is still an ongoing, amazing, difficult, emotional and physical journey for you and your family, your husband and children who are your team of caregivers. How do you sort of sum it up? What have you learned and what do you think as you go forward?
Well, I'm very excited. For one, like I said, this is really the first time in 3 years where I feel like there is a path ahead. I feel like I can actually breathe a little bit, which is a huge thing. If I had to sum it up in three emotions, um, it would be hope, excitement, and gratitude. I'm going to try to not get choked up and emotional. I would say that my biggest emotion is hope. And as I mentioned earlier, hope is in very, very short supply. It has been along my journey. And if there's one thing that cancer patients need during the hardest battle of their life, it's hope. And I really, truly think that a lack of hope will break somebody's spirit. They have to be incredibly strong. So just having that support and that sense of hope is so important. The next emotion that I would say is excitement. Um, I'm excited to be living a life that feels closer to normal than anything that I've experienced over the last 3 years. Having a schedule that doesn't revolve around infusions, nausea, fatigue, anxiety, and dread is honestly incredible. I actually feel like I can plan and live life with my husband and my kids. Um, I wish I had more hair, but it's great to look and feel mostly normal. And like I said before, this is a treatment that I feel like I could realistically stay on for the rest of my life. So that's very exciting for me. And my last point would be gratitude. Um, I feel so much gratitude for Dr. Carr for referring me and for Sameek and his team, not only for developing this medication, but just for being so invested in my success and truly celebrating the victories with me. You know, my initial worry with doing clinical trials was that I wouldn't have a personal connection to my team. And that's very, very important to me. I wanted to be seen as something that is not just a statistic. I wanted to be seen as an individual, as yeah, just as an individual. And so I was really worried for a clinical trial that I just be a number and that I feel really alone and unsupported. And my experience, honestly, could not be any more different. I have felt supported. I felt included along every step of the way with this. And I am so grateful for a life that has possibilities and dreams. And I'm excited to see just how I am going to continue to respond to this medication. Um, and I would say definitely as far as like the mental aspect of things, this is the best place that I've been in since my diagnosis. And honestly, it just feels really amazing.
Wow, listening to you explain this, I'm getting emotional. I can see Sameek, you're getting emotional. And again, thank you for sharing this. And you're an amazing, strong woman and continued success. And Sameek, I've gotten to know you a little over the years, and I can you sort of talk a little about this. This is why you do what you do, and come up with these new thinking outside of the box ideas. And you want to take this idea of a telemedicine clinical trial and expand it and make it be just out there for hundreds of rare cancers. So this is what is the future of this type of clinical trial?
You know, I'm love to talk about where we're heading next, but I just want to acknowledge that Stefanie copied my hope, excitement, and gratitude. You know, I have those same feelings. You know, from day one, we were both excited. You could hear that in our voices and our video about what we could do for you. The hope that we can bring you, that's been our goal. So that really resonates with me that you're feeling that, because that's what we're trying to bring you as a patient. You're not just a number, you're our team member. And the gratitude for me is being able to help you in that way and have an impact on you and give you what you're feeling. And in some way, if we can do that, then we've accomplished what we've set out to do. I often talk about the why, what, and how of what we do for cancer research. There's a what. Sometimes it's very complicated, something that's very obtuse. There's a how we are going to get from here to there and solve these complicated problems, how we're going to do this trial. But at the end of the day, none of it matters if we don't understand and appreciate the why. And the why is Stefanie and her family. And that's, I'm just so grateful to be a part of that for you. And coming back to hope, that's what we're trying to do next, and in a bigger way. So this is one clinical trial for pancreas cancer. So our vision is something we are calling Delivering Hope to Any Zip Code as a program of trials. And we want to take this example of pancreas cancer. We have other genetic targets across different cancer types that we've identified. And it's very simple. They're out there. We know about them. The biology is understood. The treatments that make sense are out there. And the challenge is they're sort of left on the table. These are not as common as sort of the common cancers that we are seeing the pharmaceutical industry pursue. It makes sense. They'll go after the largest market size that makes sense and start there. It's easier. The number of people, the number of patients who could benefit to be part of the study and be part of the marketplace after the drug is developed. And so we know there's plenty of other opportunity to bring those therapies to other patients. And that's sort of the niche that we're working on. Again, starting with biology and the idea of precision oncology, but we're really always remembering the why, right? And so the reason Delivering Hope to Any Zip Code matters is as a patient like Stefanie and whoever else is out there. We've been able to reach about 4 patients thus far in the study. We have 3 new referrals that just came to us from all over the country in the past week. And we have
for
another
this FGFR
for this pancreas study. And then we have another 7 who are sort of on a wait list. They're not waiting for us, but they're doing well on their current chemotherapy. So I haven't had a need to change the therapy yet. And so we're so happy that this is working the way we hoped. Someone like Stefanie, to step forward and share your story means a lot to me, because for me, this is sort of a way to help others see this hope, right? And if Stefanie can share that experience that she's done today, that helps us get the word out and build the program to deliver hope to any zip code. So thank you, Stefanie, for letting us be part of your life.
Yes, thank you. And Stefanie, you've never actually met Sameek in person, but I get the sense that you connected on a personal level.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, he's been my biggest supporter and cheerleader. I've had some really amazing providers in my care team along the way. I feel really thankful for that. But I can say that I've never had an oncologist give me their personal number and say, "Hey, if you have any questions or concerns or anything come up, you text me over the weekend. It's not a problem. You text me after hours." I mean, he was so diligent with checking in on me and, going over lab results and everything. And, he's just been amazing to work with. And I do hope that I get to meet him in person one day. I'm going to give him a huge hug. And I'm very, very grateful. He's a wonderful man. And I'm so thankful that this worked out.
Big virtual hug out to you, Stefanie. We'll meet someday in person.
I look forward to it.
Maybe Steve and I will make a road trip to Idaho.
Okay.
I love it.
Wow. Well, thank you, Sameek, for starting this clinical trial, for going above and beyond for your patients and seeking out patients all over the world that you can help. And Stefanie, thank you for sharing your story and continued good luck and good health. And we look forward to you one day maybe visiting us here on the campus of Ohio State.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I will definitely look forward to being able to meet you guys in person.
This podcast is brought to you by the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, Arthur G. James Cancer Hospital, and Richard J. Solove Research Institute. For more information, check out our website, cancer.osu.edu.